They actually happened around the same time. I remember around the 7th grade, I went to Catholic school with sisters, and they had what was called a sodality, a group of us that got together to pray together and things like that. And we were putting on a play. And there was a particular part in the play where I didn't agree with what was happening. And because of that, I said, I can't be a part of this play. And that's when I consciously became aware of the fact that I had made a choice independently of my parents telling me what to do, because it involved my faith and I just could not do it. So I would have been about 11 or 12 years old. What led me then to...
What was the... Can you tell
What was the incident?
Yeah, what was the play?
The play was about a Latin American young woman who's actually up for canonization, and she was, the scene that we were doing was one where she was in bed, and the other, my co-actor, was actually going to wear a nightgown with nothing else underneath in front of the whole school, and I just couldn't do it, because to me it was just not something to do. Not just faith-wise, I mean just plain good manners and good sense. But anyway, it was the first time that I actually stood up independently of my parents. What actually led me into deciding to join religious life, I can actually go back to the day. It was January 31st, 1980. I was 12 and a half years old. 1980, yeah. And it's the Feast of St. John Bosco, who was the founder of the sisters who taught in my school. And we had the day, it was like a day at school, but we didn't do any studying. We had like a little carnival in the morning, and in the afternoon the sisters would show a movie. And that afternoon they showed the song of Bernadette. And my name was Mary. I chose the name Bernadette when I became a sister. During that film, and I don't know if you've ever seen it, but it was written by a Jew, by the way, who was harbored in Lourdes during the war, and he made a promise to Our Lady to write an historical biography of Bernadette if he was ever able to flee. And he did. He wrote this wonderful biography of her. And the movie does not portray religious life very well at all. In fact, it's not a promo for religious life. But during that movie, I felt from the depths of my being a voice that said, the only way that you're going to be happy in life is if you become a religious. And I had fallen in love with religious. I met them first when I was 9 years old, in this beautiful women in habit. Who wouldn't want to be attracted to a life like that? But I gave up the thought because when I switched schools and started developing a little bit more, I found out that they were human and that they made mistakes. So it's like my balloon was just shattered. But that experience, I knew I was supposed to become a religious. And I went home, borrowed the book out of the library. I had to steal my mom's library card to do it because it was in the adult section of the library. I read the book to myself, and I later found out I was born on the day she died, which is her feast day. I mean, I was baptized on the day she died, so there was definitely some connection. A few months later, the fourth Sunday after Easter, the church celebrates the World Day of Prayer for Vocations. And as a Catholic family, we went to Mass, then we went to have coffee and donuts in the hall, and there was an exposition of all kinds of information on priests and religious orders, and I wanted to go over so badly, but I didn't because I'm the only daughter of 5. There's 4 boys, and my dad was just looking forward to walking me down the aisle when I got married. And they prayed for a vocation in the family, but it was supposed to be one of the boys. And my heart was just drawing me there. And my dad came to me and he said, why don't you go over and pick up some information in case you're ever interested in becoming a sister? He said nothing to my brothers. So I took that as another sign. So I went over, picked up imagine this, I'm 13 years old, picked up all this information, sat down that same day and wrote to every single community. And the only ones that invited me to pursue it at that time, because I was so young, were the Daughters of St. Paul. And we drove down to San Diego one day, and when I walked into the book center, I had that same feeling deep down inside of me that that was where I was supposed to be. And that's been my North Star. It's never left me.
So you're pretty young. How is it that you said you did high school through, or how does it work at such a young age?
We don't accept young women at that age anymore. But at that time we did, and our own sisters in our headquarters in Boston taught us high school. So I did my high school there.
So it was like going to boarding school.
It was like going to boarding school, yeah, very much so.
So you went to Boston.
I went to Boston, but I also participated in the life of the sisters. I prayed just like they did. I wore a habit similar to what they wore. I helped out in our apostolate. I started out as a typesetter and went onto the printing presses when I was old enough. Worked my way up gradually.
It's like a journey, an apprentice, a journeyman.
Exactly.
Wow.
Yeah.
How many years is it once you, like, what's the progression from there to becoming a sister?
The normal time period is about 10 years. First, you're a pre-postulant or postulant, depending on what country you're in, for 2 or 3 years. And that's just a basic introduction into the life, a lot of personal human development. Then we have a 2-year novitiate where you actually study the constitutions and you take on more of the prayer life, a bit more. It's really a time to get to know what your commitment is going to be like. And we spend 3 months in a community living the life of a sister so that we really know what it's like before we actually make a commitment to it.
So up to that point, you're not actually in a
up to
community.
that. Right. We live with the community, but we're not members of the community. After the 2 years of novitiate, we ask permission to make our first profession, and then it's almost like, the congregation is looking at us to see if this is where we belong, and we're looking at the congregation to see if this is where I belong. Always trying to see what is the will of God for me, because that's going to be the place where I am going to fulfill myself, because this is what He made me for. And so we make profession for a year at a time for 5 years. And during that time period, if a person decides this really isn't what I'm called to, they're free to leave. And then after a 5 or 6 year period of this temporary period, which is called temporary profession or juniorate, we then make a decision to go on to a final commitment or a perpetual profession. And there's another period of study for that. In the juniorate also, if a sister hasn't studied, they'll study theology, philosophy, obtain a degree of some sort, usually with the basis of theology and philosophy. And then there's a commitment, final commitment. And usually it takes 10 years. For me, it took 14 years because I was too young. So, because the minimum age for making vows is 21. So it took me half my life.
Yes.
I am so grateful just to be alive. Today I was sitting in chapel and it all of a sudden became so apparent to me that my time, like I thought I was sharing time with God, but He's really sharing His time with me. That just to be able to live and breathe and see the beauty that's around me, it's a very precious thing. And I know it sounds probably like a very generic thing, but not everyone, I think, really appreciates life. The gift of time, the gift of this other people that I've come to know, and just the awareness that God is sharing His life with me, not the other way around. My greatest wish is to become a person in which other people can feel the presence of God. He's always used intermediaries to manifest His presence in the world, beginning with Adam and Eve, Noah, Abraham, our wonderful mothers and fathers in the faith, Sarah. For us, Jesus is the ultimate person in whom God manifested Himself, but But we also believe that God wants to live his life in us, that we can become points of contact so that other people can have an experience of God. I want to be a person that when people are in my presence, they feel free to be themselves. I want them to know that I'm in love with God. I want them to know that I love being alive. I love who I am. And I wish to God everyone had the same peace and happiness that I have. Because so many people envy me. They just tell me straight out, they envy me for that. That they still, at the age of 50, they still don't know why they're here. And I want them to know that the gift that I've been given is a gift that they can have too. Bernadette was born to a very, very poor family. She was so poor that she was actually sent away to live with another family because her father lost his business. They were living in an old prison. She was an asthmatic. She was a shepherd. By the age of 14, she still hadn't made her first communion, and her parents basically said, we can't feed another person. You've got to stay where you are. She left so that she could go back into the city and live with her family so that she could make her first communion. She was a very simple, she was not an educated woman, very intelligent woman, however. But I remember she was very blunt, just like I am, very blunt. She said exactly what she had on her mind. But at the age of 14, she was sent out to collect firewood with one of her sisters, and they didn't want her to cross a river because it was too cold. So she was waiting for her sister and a friend of her sister's, and she suddenly saw a woman standing in a niche, a cave that was along the riverbank across. She immediately dropped to her knees, and she saw the image make the sign of the cross, so she started to pray. And the lady afterwards spoke and asked her to come for a few consecutive days. I don't remember the facts. Anyway, she then told her two sisters or the sister and her friend, that she saw something, but made them swear not to tell anyone. Well, they told her mother, who got upset with her, forbade her to go there. But through a succession of events, she went several times there, and in Lourdes, it's in France. And at one point, Our Lady told her to dig into the mud and to eat the weeds that were there, and she did. And a spring sprang up from there, a miraculous spring, and people still go there and to bathe in the water. And there's been numerous cures that have taken place there. She ended up entering a community. The day she entered, she was told, this is the last time you can talk about your experience, because she was famous in all of France. And she spoke her story, and that was it. And her superiors were extremely harsh with her, so that she wouldn't become proud. And she lived a life of hiddenness after that. And her philosophy was, if Our Lady wants to use me, I'm like a broom. She can pick me up and use me when she wants to, and she can put me behind the door. She was a very human person. When she lost her father, she would go to a statue and cry in front of Our Lady, because she loved her father tremendously. She was very human. She could express her feelings. And like I said, I think she also was an infirmarian in her community. She took care of her older sick sisters. She could mimic the doctor and get the sisters rolling with laughter. She had the gift of mimicking. It was they said she was absolutely hilarious to watch. So she was a very human person, and yet she was someone who was given this tremendous gift of being able to see Our Lady. Not very many people are blessed with that experience. But for me, it was her ability to be normal, and yet to have this wonderful faith life,
Mm.
but to still be able to mimic she did a lot of embroidery. She was an artist. I do embroidery as well. And I was asked to take care of our senior sisters. I have the ability of extending compassionate care to other people, and have tremendously grown in love with that type of work.
What years was Bernadette?
She was born in 1844 and died in 1879. So it's quite recent. Yeah. I have felt most connected to God, believe it or not, when I'm in the presence of another person who has some sort of weakness. I remember one time I was at the bedside of a sister who I believed was dying, and she was, and I had the gift of being able to see that. And I sat there with her just in silence, holding her hand because she was no longer conscious. And I entered this space where time just evaporated, and I knew I was assisting Jesus in his agony. Another time, one of our sisters, she was like a grandmother to me, and she died not too long ago. But before I left, she was like 2 doors down from me in the dormitory, and she would ask me to help her with little things. One time she asked me if I would help sew a little piece of Velcro on her veil. So I was sitting there sewing, and she was hunched over, because she was very weak. And I looked up, and I could see Jesus in her. Or here in Rome, I was at St. Peter's. I was praying. I was going there to pray every day during Relief Day for the young people that were there. And I asked God, where are you? Here I am praying before you, and I feel like I'm the only one in this relationship. What's your part in this relationship? Well, every time I ask God a question, I always get an answer. So I'm walking out of St. Peter's, and I see my bus going by, and I'm like, darn it, I just missed my bus. And I heard this little voice in the back of my head saying, slow down. Even missing a bus is in God's providence. Take your time. So I'm taking my time, and I'm turning in the corner, and this man is motioning to me. And I had this feeling that it was okay to go over to him, so I did. And he couldn't speak. So he was making motions to me, and I understood what he was saying. And I started talking back to him in English. I had only been here for 2 months. All of a sudden in the middle, I'm like, he doesn't understand English, so I switched to Italian. And so to confirm what he was saying to me, he needed to get on a bus. He wanted to know if I could help him walk to the bus stop and get his bus. Absolutely. I didn't know what the problem was. Anyway, as we started to walk, and I gave him my arm, his entire weight was on me. He must have cerebral palsy. Could not speak. So there we are, walking arm in arm. We're getting closer to the bus stop. There's got to be at least 50 religious standing there, all in habit. So the question in my mind was, how did he know that he could ask me? And everyone's staring at us. Like this is like a circus. So we get to the bus stop, and I saw a number 46 bus, and I said, is this your bus? And yep, this is my bus. And the bus was stopped at the light, so just in between that time, he took my hand and he kissed my hand. It was the only way he knew how to say thank you. So as the bus is coming, and I helped walk him over, and I helped hoist him up, and I asked if that was okay, if he needed me to get on, to help him find a seat. No, he was okay. He turned around and made the sign again. The doors closed, and heaven's doors opened, and all of a sudden I realized that is how Jesus interacts with me. It's when I'm able to be present, when I'm able to leave my time schedule, when I'm able to slow down, when I'm able to be able to see another person instead of being angry because I didn't catch the bus. That I can give of myself and allow another person to give themselves to me. That is when I found in my life that I have experienced God most closely, just out of the blue. No preparation whatsoever. It's like God just reaches in and here I am.
Sure. Do you have a favorite Bible passage or quote?
I have many. Probably the one that sustained me the most is Isaiah. Do not be afraid, for I have redeemed you. I have called you by name. You are mine. Even if you pass through the raging waters, you will not drown. And then it goes on a little bit, and then it says, "And you are precious in my sight, and I love you." I fell in love with that passage, I think, when I was around 19 years old, when my brother had cancer, and my faith went through a really big crisis over that. And it really spoke to me because I was drowning. But I've gone back to that over and over and over again, especially the part, "You are precious in my sight, and I love you." Just letting God say that to me over and over again. It's been a real faith-sustaining passage for me.
Thank you so much.
The end?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Mm.